The moment Evelyn Carter was slapped across the face by her own husband in front of his mother and his mistress, the entire restaurant fell silent. The sharp sound echoed through the private dining room of the Golden Crown, one of the most expensive restaurants in Beverly Hills, California. Crystal glasses trembled. Conversations died mid-sentence. Dozens of wealthy guests turned in shock. Evelyn stumbled back, her cheek burning. And standing in front of her, breathing hard with anger, was the man she had been married to for 7 years. Ryan Carter. Behind him stood 2 women. One was his mother, Marianne Carter, arms crossed, lips curled in judgment. The other was his mistress, Sophie Lang, young, beautiful, and wearing a smug smile in a tight red dress. Ryan had just slapped his wife in public. And none of them had the slightest idea that Evelyn secretly owned the very company that paid all their salaries. It was supposed to be a celebration. That was the excuse Ryan had used. Company top performer dinner, he had told Evelyn that morning. My mom wants to come. And Sophie, well, she works in our department now. It's just business. Evelyn had believed him. Like she always did. She wore a simple navy blue dress, no diamonds, no designer bag. She tied her hair back and arrived quietly, as usual, letting Ryan walk ahead of her like a stranger instead of a husband. That was how their marriage had become over the years. Cold. Quiet. Empty. Across the table now, Ryan's mother watched Evelyn with open dislike. She's changed you, Ryan, Marianne said earlier, swirling her wine. You used to be ambitious. Now you come home tired and quiet like an old man. Sophie had laughed softly. Some women drain men without even trying. Ryan had smiled at that. Evelyn had looked down at her plate and stayed silent. Like always. Ryan worked as a senior operations manager at Carter Global Holdings, a powerful logistics and manufacturing company with offices across the United States. His mother Marianne worked in corporate finance at the same company. And Sophie? She had recently been promoted into Ryan's department under his direct supervision. Evelyn, according to all of them, was just a quiet housewife. What none of them knew was that Evelyn Carter was the true owner and majority shareholder of Carter Global Holdings. The company that carried Ryan's last name wasn't built by his family. It had been built by hers. But Evelyn had buried that truth the day she married Ryan. She wanted to be loved for who she was, not for what she owned. That was her first mistake. Dinner had barely started when Marian leaned forward and said sharply, "So, Evelyn, I heard Ryan might finally get his director promotion this year." Evelyn looked up. That's great news. Sophie laughed softly again. If everything goes smoothly. Ryan squeezed Sophie's hand under the table, not even trying to hide it. And something in Evelyn's chest cracked quietly. Then Marianne said the words that finally pushed everything over the edge. "A man cannot climb with dead weight tied to him," she said, staring directly at Evelyn. "A wife either lifts her husband, or drags him down." The table went silent. Evelyn opened her mouth. For once, she was about to speak. That was when Ryan suddenly stood up. "You know what?" he said loudly. "My mother is right." Evelyn froze. "You've done nothing for me for years," he continued. "No connections. No influence. No money. Nothing." People at nearby tables turned to watch. "And now," Ryan added, pointing at Sophie, "I finally have someone who actually supports my career." Evelyn's hands began to shake. "Ryan, we're married." Ryan laughed. "Not for long." Sophie leaned forward with fake sympathy. "You should sign the divorce papers soon, Evelyn. Ryan deserves better." That was when Evelyn stood up. Not in anger. Not in rage. But in heartbreak. "I supported you when you had nothing," she said quietly. "I believed in you when your own family didn't. I stayed silent when you ignored me for years." Ryan's eyes went dark. "You stayed silent because you're weak." And then, in front of his mother, in front of his mistress, in front of the entire restaurant, Ryan slapped Evelyn across the face. For a moment, even Sophie looked shocked. Marianne was the first to recover. "Good," she said coldly. Sometimes a woman needs to learn her place. Evelyn touched her cheek slowly. The pain wasn't just physical. It reached deep into her chest, into 7 years of quiet sacrifice. Ryan leaned toward her and whispered through his teeth, "You should be grateful I didn't throw you out on the street years ago." Tears filled Evelyn's eyes. But she did not cry. Instead, she looked at Ryan with a calm that made his anger falter. "You're done," she said softly. Ryan laughed. "Done with what? You don't even have a job. You survive on my salary." That was when Sophie leaned over and added the final knife. "And guess what, Evelyn," she said sweetly. "Ryan and I are transferring to New York next month. Better department. Better pay. Better life." Evelyn nodded slowly. "I see." Marianne smirked. "Pack your things quietly. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." The manager of the restaurant approached nervously. "Sir, we cannot allow violence in." Ryan turned and snapped. "Do you know who I am? I manage contracts worth hundreds of millions at Carter Global. Do you want that business or not?" The manager backed away in fear. Evelyn finally picked up her purse. Not with trembling hands, but with steady ones. She turned to leave. And just before she stepped away, she said one last thing. "You should have let me walk out quietly tonight." Ryan rolled his eyes. "And do what? Cry to someone who cares?" Evelyn didn't respond. She simply walked out of the restaurant into the warm California night. Behind her, Ryan sat back down beside his mistress, already laughing again as if nothing had happened. But 5 minutes later, his phone vibrated. Then Marianne's phone. Then Sophie's. All at the same time. Ryan frowned and answered. "Hello." His face slowly drained of all color. Ryan stood up so violently his chair crashed backward. Marianne's face turned pale as she listened to her call. Sophie began to tremble. And across the city, sitting alone in her car with tears finally falling down her face, Evelyn Carter pressed one simple button on her phone. And whispered, "Start the process." Ryan's hands were shaking as he slowly lowered his phone. Marianne's lips were trembling. Sophie had gone completely pale. "What is it?" Ryan demanded. "Why do you all look like that?" Marianne swallowed hard. That was corporate legal. They said all company accounts connected to our division have been frozen. They said there's been an emergency ownership verification. Ryan laughed nervously. "That's impossible. The board would never freeze operations without warning." Sophie's voice cracked. "Ryan, HR just called me. They told me my access badge has been deactivated. They told me not to return to the office until I receive further notice." Ryan's stomach tightened. "That's just a system error. I'll fix it with one call." He dialed his executive director. No answer. He dialed again. Straight to voicemail. Around the restaurant, people were beginning to stare again. Whispers moved from table to table. Ryan stood up. "Let's go. All of you. Now." Across town, Evelyn sat in her car in a quiet underground garage beneath a glass office tower in downtown Los Angeles. Tear tracks were still wet on her cheeks, but her breathing had slowed. Her phone rang. "Everything is in motion," a calm female voice said. "Board members have been notified. Emergency authority transfer is being executed under your identity clearance." Evelyn closed her eyes. "What about Ryan?" "He's been locked out of all company systems. He will receive formal termination within the hour." "And Marianne?" "Same." Evelyn hesitated for a moment. "Good." She looked at her reflection in the mirror. Her cheek was still red from the slap. "This ends tonight," she said softly. Ryan burst into his condo an hour later and threw his jacket onto the couch. "This is sabotage," he snapped. "Someone is messing with the company systems. I'll have them fired." Marianne paced in tight circles. Ryan, legal didn't sound confused. They sounded scared. Sophie sat frozen on the edge of the couch. They asked me if I had ever contacted Evelyn Carter outside of work. Ryan turned sharply. Why would they ask that? I don't know, Sophie whispered. But they said her name like it mattered. Ryan laughed. Evelyn? That's insane. She doesn't even understand how the company works. His phone vibrated again. This time, the caller ID read, Carter Global, Board Office. Ryan answered instantly. Yes. The voice on the line was cold and official. Mr. Ryan Carter, effective immediately, your position as Senior Operations Manager at Carter Global Holdings has been terminated for gross misconduct under executive authority. Ryan froze. That's not possible. You need board approval for that. The board has already approved. Who ordered this? Ryan shouted. There was a brief pause. Mrs. Evelyn Carter. The call ended. The room went silent. Sophie slowly turned and looked at Ryan. Your wife owns the company. Ryan shook his head in disbelief. No. That's impossible. Evelyn has nothing. She's nothing. Marianne's face slowly collapsed in horror. Ryan. Evelyn's maiden name was Blackwood. Ryan frowned. So? Marianne's voice dropped to a whisper. The Blackwoods owned half of Carter Global before the merger 20 years ago. Ryan's mouth went dry. Sophie stood up slowly. You mean, that quiet woman you slapped, owns everything? At that exact moment, the doorbell rang. Ryan moved slowly and opened the door. Two men in dark suits stood outside, holding official folders. Mr. Ryan Carter, one of them asked. Yes, Ryan answered weakly. You've been served with immediate eviction notice. This property is registered under Evelyn Carter's residential trust. Ryan staggered back. That's not true. This is my home. The man handed him the document. You have 48 hours to vacate. Sophie's bag slipped from her shoulder and hit the floor. Marianne collapsed into a chair. Across the city, Evelyn stood inside the top-floor boardroom of Carter Global Holdings for the first time in 7 years. Every seat was occupied. Every executive stood when she entered. Madam Chairwoman, the CEO said respectfully. We've been waiting for you. Evelyn walked to the head of the table and placed her purse down slowly. You let my husband use my company power without earning it, she said calmly. You let him protect his mistress. You let his mother interfere in operations. No one spoke. That ends today. She looked around the room. Every promotion he received is under audit. Every favor is under investigation. Anyone who helped humiliate me by protecting him will be exposed. The executives shifted uneasily. And one more thing, Evelyn added. I want him to know exactly what he lost. But not yet. She turned to her assistant. Prepare the public release. Tomorrow morning. Back in the condo, Sophie suddenly grabbed her purse. This is your mess, she snapped at Ryan. You lied to me. You told me your wife was nobody. Ryan shouted after her. Sophie, wait. But the door slammed. Marianne looked at her son with tears in her eyes. You destroyed us. Ryan slid down against the wall, his head in his hands. Outside, the city lights of Los Angeles glowed without mercy. And in the shadows of power, Evelyn Carter was just getting started. The next morning, Ryan woke up to the sound of his phone exploding with notifications. Missed calls. Messages. Emails. All from co-workers. All saying the same thing. Did you see the news? Ryan, what did you do? Your wife is everywhere. Heart pounding, Ryan opened the nearest link. There she was. Evelyn Carter. Standing at the head of the Carter Global boardroom. Confident. Calm. Untouchable. The headline beneath her image made his stomach drop. Evelyn Carter confirmed as majority owner and chairwoman of Carter Global Holdings. Ryan dropped his phone. No, this isn't real, he whispered. Marianne rushed in from the kitchen, her face white. Ryan, every financial channel is playing it. She controls everything. Every branch. Every salary. Every contract. Ryan staggered to his feet. Then call her. Right now. Marianne hesitated. She blocked me. Ryan grabbed his own phone and called. Straight to voicemail. Again. Blocked. His knees buckled. By noon, the consequences were spreading like fire. Ryan's professional reputation collapsed in hours. Former partners cancelled deals. Executives refused his calls. Friends stopped answering. By evening, he was trending online for the wrong reasons. Executive fired after publicly assaulting company owner. The video from the restaurant had leaked. The slap. The laughter. The humiliation. All of it. Marianne sat frozen on the couch. We're ruined, she whispered. And then, the doorbell rang. Ryan looked up slowly. Outside stood a sheriff's deputy. Mr. Ryan Carter, the deputy asked. You are required to appear in court tomorrow morning for a domestic violence hearing. Your wife has filed charges. Marianne gasped. Evelyn wouldn't do that. Ryan's voice broke. She can do anything now. Across the city, Evelyn stood alone in her penthouse apartment overlooking the ocean in Santa Monica. The waves rolled calmly below as her assistant stood behind her. He tried calling you over 300 times, the assistant said. His mother tried too. Sophie attempted to access her old office. Security removed her. Evelyn nodded slowly. And the court. The judge approved the fast-track hearing because of the assault video. Evelyn finally turned from the window. For 7 years, they thought I was weak, she said quietly. Tomorrow, they learn the price of that mistake. That night, Ryan sat alone in the dark. His condo was half-packed. Sophie was gone. His career was gone. His future was hanging by a thread. And there was only one thing he could still do. He drove across the city. When he reached Evelyn's building, security stopped him at the gate. I need to see my wife, he begged. The guard checked a tablet and shook his head. Mrs. Carter has issued a restraining request. You have 10 seconds to leave. Ryan fell to his knees. I made a mistake, he cried. Tell her I'm sorry. The guard looked down at him coldly. Time's up. The gate closed. Ryan broke. The next morning, the courtroom was packed. News cameras lined the sidewalk. Ryan entered in a wrinkled suit, eyes hollow. Marianne followed in silence. Across the room, the doors opened. And Evelyn Carter walked in. Not as a housewife. Not as a victim. But as the most powerful person in the building. Ryan looked up. Their eyes met. And for the first time in his life, he realized he had never known her at all. The courtroom was silent as Evelyn Carter took a seat at the front. Ryan sat across from her, hands shaking. He looked smaller now. The man who once raised his hand to her in public could barely lift his eyes. The judge entered. The hearing moved quickly. The restaurant video played on the large screen. The slap echoed through the courtroom. A sound that made people flinch all over again. Ryan's lawyer tried to speak about stress and misunderstandings, but the judge shut it down immediately. This was assault, the judge said firmly. And it was public. Ryan's head dropped. Within minutes, the ruling came. A protection order was issued. Ryan lost all rights to Evelyn's property, and charges were officially filed. Marian broke down in tears. Ryan said nothing. Outside the courthouse, reporters rushed forward. Mrs. Carter, are you going to destroy your husband financially? Evelyn stopped and turned slowly. I didn't destroy anyone, she said calmly. He destroyed himself the moment he raised his hand. She got into her car and drove away. 3 weeks later, Ryan lost everything. No job. No corporate future. No social standing. The board blacklisted him quietly but completely. Marianne was forced into early retirement. Sophie tried to leverage the scandal into fame, but no company would touch her. The three of them went their separate ways, broken, bitter, and forgotten. One quiet afternoon, Evelyn returned to the same restaurant where her life had changed. She sat alone at the table where it had happened. The manager approached nervously. "Mrs. Carter, I just wanted to apologize for what happened that night." Evelyn smiled softly. "You didn't do anything wrong." She ordered tea. As she waited, her phone buzzed. A message appeared from an unknown number. "Ryan, I was wrong. About everything. I lost the only real thing I had." Evelyn stared at the screen for a long moment. Then she typed only 3 words. "Consider it finished," and blocked the number forever. 6 months later, Evelyn stood on a stage in San Francisco as the new public face of Carter Global Holdings. Applause filled the hall. But she didn't speak about money. She spoke about respect. About silence. About how power doesn't always shout. Sometimes, it waits. After the event, as she stood alone near the window overlooking the city lights, her assistant approached. "Do you regret not stopping it sooner?" the assistant asked. Evelyn thought for a moment. "No," she answered. "Because now I know the truth about everyone. And that truth is priceless." That night, Evelyn returned to her Ocean View home in Santa Monica. No shouting. No control. No fear. Just peace. She stood on the balcony, feeling the cool wind on her face where the slap had once burned. The pain was gone. But the lesson remained. She had given immeasurable power to people who never deserved it. And she would never make that mistake again. Ryan lost his career. Marianne lost her status. Sophie lost her illusion. But Evelyn gained something none of them ever had. Freedom. Now let me ask you, the viewer. Do you think Evelyn did the right thing? Or should she have shown mercy? Drop your opinion in the comments. I really want to hear what you think. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories like this one.